Thank you, sir. Moving on, we would like to cordially invite Senior Professor Sudanta Liyanage, Vice Chancellor of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, to address the gathering. Thank you, sir. Now, we would like to call upon stage the chief guest for the day, Senior Professor Sampath Amanatunga, Chairman of the University Grants Commission, to address the gathering. Sir, will you please oblige?
Thank you, sir. Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives, is unfortunately unable to attend today. But representing Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, but representing Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, Ms. Anouk Baron, the Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives, is here with us. In this position, she heads the Economic Department and focuses on sustainability. Before moving to Sri Lanka, Ms. Anouk was posted at the Netherlands Embassy in Vietnam and also worked at the Department for Sustainable Economic Development and the Department for Social Development at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now we would like to invite Ms. Anouk Baron. Anouk Baron. Anouk Baron to address the gathering. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, sir. Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives, is unfortunately unable.
Good morning, distinguished guests, members of the academic and non-academic staff. We warmly welcome you to the 26th International Forestry and Environment Symposium 2022, organized by the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science of the University of Sri And we are kindly reminding you to strictly adhere to the COVID-19 guidelines until the end of the conference. And please mute your mobile devices to avoid any sort of interruptions.
Gathered here today, we have researchers, academia, professionals, and policymakers in the industry to meet and discuss the latest developments in forestry and environmental sector in line with our theme for the year, Developments in Forestry and Environmental Science in 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, our heartfelt gratitude is extended to you for being an active part in this magnificent journey of 26 years. We hope this collaboration will remain and only grow stronger in years to come. To inaugurate this graceful occasion, highlighting the traditional oil lamp, we cordially invite the chief guest for the day, Senior Professor Sampath Amarathunga, Chairman of the University Grants Commission, representing the guest of honor for the day, Ms. Anouk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Sri Lanka and Maldives, Senior Professor Sudhanta Liyanage, Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Professor Upul Subasinghe, Symposium Chair, and the Head of the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, and Dr. G.G.T. Chandatilaka, Symposium Coordinator, and Mr. A.B. Valita, Registrar of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, and finally, Mrs. K.T. Sipriyangadi, Burza of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please remain standing for the university anthem.
Sri Lanka Pinwar Randirani Srinivasa Maha Aganagare Sri Jayavardhana Pura Sarasari Sri Namaya Randhavam Lomudune Hikkaduwe Siri Sumagul Samidun Velivitiye Sorat Bandhu Yatidun Vigikala Vidyodaya Vidu Bimadun Eliyen Divi Magasarasau Sri Lanka Pinwar Randirani Srinivasa Maha Aganagare Sri Jayavardhana Pura Sarasari Sri Namaya Randhavam Lomudune Ayuktiyedi Vivadashili Asatyayedi Vicharashili Viyat Sabha Med Samajashili Viyatun Vidaya Pobayau Sri Lanka Pinwar Randirani Srinivasa Maha Aganagare Sri Jayavardhana Pura Sarasari Sri Namaya Randhavam Lomudune Vidya Uppatatan Setta Vidya Uppatatan Setta Vidya Uppatatan Setta
Before commencing today's proceedings, it is time for our distinguished invitees to take the seats at the head table. However, due to COVID-19 regulations and social distancing requirements, we shall accommodate only 5 of our dignitaries at the head table. We would like to cordially invite the following dignitaries to take the reserved seats at the head table. Our chief guest for the day, Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman of the University Grants Commission. Representing the guest of honor for the day, Ms. Anouk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Sri Lanka and Maldives. Senior Professor Sudhantha Liyanage, Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Javardhanpura. Senior Professor Lalin Karnanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Javardhanpura. Professor Upul Subasinghe, the Symposium Chair and the Head of the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science, University of Sri Javardhanpura.
Distinguished as the oldest and most renowned forestry and environmental research conference in South Asia, this year we celebrate 26 years of prestigious historical remembrance. Let us commence the 26th International Forestry and Environment Symposium 2022.
To start off today's proceedings, by welcoming you all, I would like to call upon the Symposium Chair, Professor Upul Subasinghe, Head of the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science, University of Sri Javardhanpura, to address the gathering.
Good morning to you all. Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman, University Grants Commission, Ms. Anouk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Senior Professor Sudanta Liyanage, our Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Jawaharlal, Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean, Faculty of Applied Sciences, Dr. Tilak Chandra Tilak and Dr. Vamija Surya, Symposium Coordinators, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. On behalf of the organizing committee of the 26th International Forestry and Environment Symposium, I'm honored and privileged to deliver the welcome speech. First of all, I welcome our chief guest, Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman of the University Grants Commission. He was with us in many past symposia as former Vice Chancellor of our university and also now as the Chairman of the University Grants Commission. We all welcome you, sir, to this event. And then I welcome our guest of honor, Ms. Anuk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives. She also represents the Ambassador, Her Excellency, Ms. Tanya Honore. We warmly welcome you, Madam, to this event. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome Senior Professor Sudanta Liyanage, our Vice Chancellor. He has been with us almost from the inception of Symposia as an academic, as the former head of Chemistry Department, former Dean of Faculty of Applied Sciences, and now as the Vice Chancellor of our university. I warmly welcome Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jawaharlal, to this event. I also like to welcome Registrar of the University of Sri Jawaharlal, Ms. A.B. Valavita, Ms. KTC Priyangani, our bursar, to the Symposium inauguration session. I also welcome Senior Professor Padmalal Manage, Professor Ajwat, Co-Chairs of Research Council, and Professor Upul Marapana, Chairman, Life Sciences Board, for the inauguration ceremony. I also welcome all the deans, heads of departments, academics and administration of the University of Sri Jawaharlal for the event. Next, I also welcome Professor Cyril Vijayasundara, Institute of Fundamental Studies, Kandy, and Professor Sanjay Sharma, Jaipur Engineering College and Research Center, India, who deliver the theme talks, and also they are joining with us online for the inauguration ceremony. Finally, I like to welcome all the invitees, keynote speakers, session chairs, presenters, researchers, academia and non-academic staff, and also the students. Dr. Tilak Chandra Tilaka will deliver the vote of thanks officially at the end of this session, but I feel it's my duty to thank Dr. Chandra Tilaka and Dr. Vamija Surya, who coordinated the symposium this time under a lot of difficulties, and both of them were well supported by the members of the Department of Forestry and Environment Science, academics, non-academics, assistant lecturers, demonstrators, and students. I wish this event a great success, and also I hope to have the 2023 symposium in person for all 2 days in a COVID-free world, so that we can have more interactions, more discussions, and more fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of one of the Keynote speakers who has joined via Zoom. He is Professor Sanjay K. Sharma, Dean Research of Jaipur Engineering College and Research Center, India. We feel privileged to have such an honorable personality as you. To get a brief idea of this symposium, let us spare a few minutes and watch this video, Walking Down the Memory Lane.
Endeavoring to serve the research community for 25 years, the International Forestry and Environment Symposium of University of Sri Jawaharlal reaches its 26th milestone in 2022. Renowned as the oldest forestry and environment conference in South Asia, undoubtedly this is the most predominant event for eminent researchers and scholars in the genre of forestry and environmental sciences.
We have started similar kind of a conference in Faculty of Management Studies, which I have given the leadership to come out from the national level to an international level. So the experience of this particular conference was very much used by me for the development of ICBM at management.
Last 15 to 16 years, I think almost all symposium I have participated. So, and you all have supported this particular department for most of our people, and so they have given you PhD opportunities during when you all are very young. I think that is a very great strength to this particular department. Now it's almost 25 years after establishment of your department. I am very proud as a member of the Faculty of Applied Science member, the development of your department.
In the past, scientists were merely discussing their research findings themselves, as they did not have a neutral platform to bring their research into light. Filling that gap, we have started this symposium in 1995 at University of Sri Jayawardenepura.
In 1982-83, we started the MSc course in forestry with a lot of financial aid from the government. We started this international symposium in forestry. By that time, we had established forestry courses so much that we created the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science also at about the same time. So we recruited a lot of young, active and very energetic people into this course and into our staff members, and especially from the very beginning we had selected Professor Hemant Ranasinghe, Hiran Amarasekara, Dr. B.M.P. Singakumar and Prasanthi Gunawardana, later on Professor Subhasinghe, and a lot of people who are very active in the field at the moment.
The symposium creates an open platform for both eminent academics and young researchers to present their research findings in front of policymakers, academia and industry. These new findings are published on the website as well as the peer-reviewed refereed Journal of Tropical Forestry and Environment. We have now introduced two Scopus indexed international journals. One is Forests and People, a journal published by Elsevier for forestry and natural resources research, and the other is the Environment Quality Management Journal, which is published by Wiley and Sons for research on environmental management.
This is one of the largest and oldest forestry and environment symposium in South Asia. We are glad that in this symposia, both young researchers and senior academics present their research findings and debate their research findings. Since 1995, we were able to provide a stage for several researchers to brought their research into action.
We had a mix of presenters and the researchers. We have the senior researchers, at the same time we have the junior or young or emerging researchers who are very much into the science, into the forestry sector and also into the environment sector, and their findings are amazing because all the senior scientists were really impressed about those work of the youngsters.
Annually organized by the Department of Forestry and Environmental Sciences, this exemplary event brings together academics, scientists, professionals, stakeholders and policymakers of the field of forestry and environment. With several participants from Asia and around the world, new professional connections are made, thus paving the way for a greener and more sustainable world. The Department of Forestry and Environmental Sciences of University of Sri Jayawardenepura proudly presents the 26th International Forestry and Environment Symposium.
Next in the agenda, we would like to cordially invite Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardenepura, to address the gathering.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Her Excellency Deputy Ambassador Mrs. Anouk Baron, representing the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands, Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman UGC, Senior Professor Sudhantha Liyanage, Vice Chancellor, keynote speakers, deans of faculties, colleagues, and participants. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me for this event. Now, from 2020 March, 13th of March, we have had the first announcement of COVID incidents. Then after that, it's almost two years since we are in this pandemic situations. And then on top of the pandemic situation, beside the pandemic situation, we have other problems. There is a looming energy crisis, looming food crisis. So when we have these type of crises, if you are hungry, if your children are hungry, your priorities will change. So probably first to hit will be environment and other priorities. So probably this is not only in Sri Lanka, it's a global scenario. Few days ago, I read in Guardian, the rich has become richer, poor has become poorer. So the billionaires have increased their wealth from 7 trillion US dollars to 10 trillion US dollars. So we will be affected. We will be affected. And now, when it's come to environment also, we are at the receiving end. We don't produce carbon dioxide that much. We don't produce then met harmful levels, these greenhouse gases. But we have been asked to preserve our forest. And in Brazil, the President Jair Bolsonaro says, it is our forest. Amazon is our forest. We can do whatever we want. Nobody can demand what to do with it. Right? So, because someone else is making carbon dioxide, and you have to maintain carbon sinks. And recently they have found that the Amazon is not anymore a carbon sink. It's producing carbon dioxide. Net production is not negative. So because of burning to produce things like beef, wheat, again to send to the North America, mainly to North America and to developed countries. So then coming to the symposium, the developments in forestry and environment area. So we have tracks covering, not only forest and environment, there are tracks in forest natural resource management, biodiversity conservation and management, waste management and pollution control, environmental economics, tourism, sustainable tourism, biomass as sustainable energy. So wood-based industries, environmental engineering and green technology, geology, soil and water resource management. It is a plethora of sort of a variety of areas. It's a very wide area that we are to cover from today in onwards. So at least I think policymakers will make decisions based on these scientific facts, because in recent past we saw the tangible evidences are there of what happened due to making decisions not based on scientific facts. So I think this is a good forum where academia, researchers, industrialists, and policymakers are going to be there. So I hope that, because we have to go step by step. So this will be a small step. Still, I hope that it will be contributing to the society and to not to harm the or not to have a negative impact on the environment when we make policies in the future, recent future, as well as long term and mid term. And I would like to congratulate the chair, Professor Singh, and the team for having this event in this difficult time. Further, the students, I think in the department, there's a special culture where students are involved in this event. So I'd like to congratulate them and the staff of the department for organizing and leading this event. And I hope that everyone will have a fruitful time and wish all the best for the organizing committee and the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we would like to call upon stage the chief guest for the day, Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Chairman of the University Grants Commission, to address the gathering. So will you please oblige?
Very good morning, Madam Deputy Ambassador to Sri Lanka, from Kingdom of Netherlands, Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Jawadhanapura, Deans of Faculties, especially the Head of Forestry and Environmental Science Department Head, and also the Conference Chair, Registrar, Bursa, Academia, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank organizers, including Professor Hiran, inviting me for this wonderful event. As we all know, we are in a severe pandemic today. For the last 2 years, 24 months, continuously, we are suffering with this. We have experienced 4 waves of this pandemic. Started in 2020, February and March. But we are, as a sector, I mean, higher education, without any interruption with the use of high quality technology, we are delivering our work. That is amazing. That is unbelievable. Normally, when we stop classes, universities, again we start when we open universities. When we close, we put the padlock to the main gate and close everything, including laboratories, libraries, roads inside universities, hostels, everything. No one will come, at least to see whether the place is in existence, to see. Nobody will come. But definitely, the government confirmed the salary, 25th for anyone. So this was the situation that we experienced. But with this pandemic, we are functioning. We are working more than the normal at that time. We are delivering classes, lectures, tutorials, sometimes practicals online. Apart from that, we are doing examinations as well. Not only that, the teaching part, when it is come to research, we are continuing. Maybe we are now taking steps more than what we have experienced earlier. And look at the forum here, and a lot of people are online listening and watching the video today from all over. Normally, for this forestry conference, we spend millions. In some years, we have accommodated, Professor Hiran, maybe 500 people at Kandalaman. I can still remember. We all went to Kandalaman. Maybe 25, 30 cars taken from the university. We all went there. Not only the people here, all universities related to this subject, Mahavali Authority and other related parties. But see, today, what we are doing, we are continuing our responsibility. So, I don't know how to pay the gratitude. I don't know the monetary value of continuing all these. That is unbelievable. As Chairman UGC, I always admire universities, academia, administration, non-academic staff, especially students, because they don't have proper devices. They come online with their smartphones, but they never ever criticize or bargain for devices. So this particular place, this forestry and environment science, is one of the best departments in our country. So we all know in 1970 government planned Mahavali development within 30 years to complete. But 77 government said, no point of waiting more 30 years, better to finish this off within 5 years. So acres belongs to this original master plan. It was more than 1 million acres, lot of forest, bee forest for agriculture. Then at that time, the government wanted to see the impact of this scientifically. That is the main reason why at that time the government requested from University of Sri Jayawardhanapura to establish forestry and environmental science. So this is dedicated for this. And from the inception, we were given a responsibility. I don't know after that, successive governments have taken the experience of this particular place. I mean, especially research findings when they make policies for the nation. So this environmental and forestry department must become a faculty in future, because for the nation, the responsibility is huge. When I was in Japan doing my PhD, my professor organized a field visit to Vietnam. My area was small and medium entrepreneurs. So they took 4 or 5 more PhD students with him. We went. Then according to the agenda, one day we have to visit to a place where one lady is handling chopsticks making industry. So I said, I don't want to visit this place because I know it's made out of timber, chopsticks. They use and they discard. So I said, why we are visiting a place like this? Then my professor said, no, once you go there, you will realize the importance of that. I said, no. Now we Asians, we use fingers and we wash and there is no cost. But to see Japanese and that part of the world, how much they use these chopsticks, so I'm criticizing. So it was a learning environment, so you can talk with your professor in any subject. So I was telling him that this is bad for the environment. Then the particular day we went to that place, then I saw a lot of trees were taken to that place and it was a huge chopsticks making industry. So one lady is handling the whole industry. Then they explained us, we don't cut very important hard timber. We have a small land, we plant trees there, and within 6 months, we cut all trees in that small land and we bring them here and we make chopsticks. So only that area government has allowed to use for this chopsticks business. And they said, we have this much of employees. They all uneducated workers here. And they fund for this much of families. And my professor said, Amara, it's sustainable. It's sustainable. You have to look at that way. Right. So even in South Africa, they export timber. They export timber. But if you cut one tree, you have to plant 3. And they give this business for multinationals. And all trees and everything computerized. They know the size of the tree and everything computerized. By just looking at the screen, you can just manage the forest. So I don't know when Sri Lanka can go up to that level. I think Professor Subhasingha, Professor Hiran, actually the responsibility of this department to take us to that level. Managing forests properly and thinking about sustainability. Actually, we propose so many things. I don't know whether there are people to listen. Only researchers, we all know how to run the place, how to do things, but only thing somehow, I don't know the mechanism. We have to again sit and see what is the mechanism to take this from ground level to the top level for sustainable policy making as well. So thank you very much inviting me. A wonderful, finest conferences we have in this country. So 26 years is not at all a simple period. So I'm here at Jayawardhanapura for 31 years. So this is 26 years. So I can remember the starting of the department, right? There are landmarks, right? And forestry and environment, it's a fantastic department. Lot of young people all the time, they produce, and they are not only committed to that department or the faculty, they come out and work with the university to help the university to bring the university to a national or the international level. So thank you very much, and madam, thank you so much visiting us and helping Sri Jayawardena. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on, we would like to cordially invite Senior Professor Sudanta Liyanage, Vice Chancellor of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, to address the gathering.
Ayubowan, very good morning to everybody. Madam Deputy Ambassador to the Netherlands to Sri Lanka. So then the Chairman UGC, Professor Senior Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences and the other deans, Head of the Department Forestry and Environmental Science, and all the members of the Forestry and Environmental Science Department, fellow academics at the faculty and other faculties, Registrar, Bursa, and all the other non-academic staff members, young researchers. I think I'm very happy and be proud to be here. And especially today is a very important day for all University of Sri Jayawardhanapura persons. The thing is, I think now this is happening at the Prime Minister's office. One of our very proud alumni member, Mr. Anura Disanayake, is assuming duties as the Secretary to the Prime Minister. So I think as all Vidyodhiyans or the Sri Jayawardhanapura University alumni, we have to be very proud on that particular event. And already I have sent him a message to wishing him. So therefore, that's a very important thing. And also this Forestry and Environmental Science Symposium, this is I think the 26th symposium. I may be present at least 20 plus events in most of the years. So I think this is the oldest and the most, we'll say the best event happening at the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. One of the reasons is this is the best networking event among the scientists, the young researchers, and the fellow academia. So this is happening during the last 26 years. That is an important thing about that. So each and every year, due to all difficulties, somehow the department managed to organize this symposium. This year too, I think you may have received about 175 or maybe little over that number of abstracts, out of which you will have selected 120 abstracts for your symposium. So that's also a very important thing. I know that most of the scientists and the researchers, so they are waiting till we are organizing this particular research symposium, not only in Sri Lanka. We have the experience, there are a lot of international members are coming and they are presenting their cases to this symposium. And as a scientist, I always believe symposiums are extremely important. The most important thing is once you discover anything, or if you are coming up with something new, you have to discuss all these findings with your fellow colleagues. In recent few months, Sri Lanka also experiencing some issues. Two issues are directly connected with the science. The first one is the gas issue. Yes, of course, the domestic gases, so normally we are using propane and butane. So you can mix any ratio of propane and butane and you can use it as a domestic gas. That is fine. That's a normal scientific evidence. But when you are mixing and using in the day-to-day life, you have to be extremely careful. So what are the other factors affecting when you change the ratio of the gas? That we have not looked into that. So that means that discussion was in with the society. I think therefore, I think we have failed and we are experiencing some problems, and some of my colleagues, so they have to intervene with the help of the others to solve this issue. But I think now at least we are up to a certain extent, we have solved that issue. The second one is the fertilizer issue. I don't like to comment on that. Again, that is also a scientific issue. Yes, the organic fertilizer, doing organic farming, everything is fantastic, no problem at all. But in the country like Sri Lanka, where we are having a decent amount of room temperature, where there is 27, 30 centigrade. You have to be extremely careful about those things. I think we haven't discussed with the society, with the fellow researchers, fellow members before implementing that particular thing. All these things are fantastic, good. But I think always I am telling, if you're going to implement anything scientific to the society, you have to think about what are the other issues the society is going to face. So otherwise you will end up with the failed project, or the people going to criticize ourselves. So in that way, I think these things are extremely important. Now, very recently, the Department of Forest Department and Conservation, they have handed over some project to our university. So then I have directed that particular project to the Department of Forest and Environmental Sciences. So we know that in Sri Lanka, we have introduced species, fast growing, introduced species in most of the forest. So they are rethinking about that particular strategy. They really want to remove most of these trees, and they really want to have something new, where these plants also has to be fast growing, but they are not doing that much of damage to the environment. So I think we have to come up with some new ideas. I hope that my colleagues at the Forest and Environmental Science, they may come up with some new ideas, what kind of plants can we grow in those forest areas. So something like that. So therefore, I know that this is not a very simple thing to organize this kind of a symposia. So it's a lot of hard work. I would like to thank the symposium coordinator and his team for doing this wonderful job. And this is because once you complete or end this particular symposium, I think it is very important to give us kind of a conclusion. So then we can send all these concluded remarks to the policymakers and to the politicians. Otherwise, there's no point of having these kind of symposium if there is no outcome coming from these symposiums. So therefore, I'm appealing from the symposium organizers, please come up with some kind of a document, so then we can very easily, even the Sri Lanka Parliament also looking for these kind of things. I think about 1 year ago, sir, we have established some kind of a link in between the Sri Lanka Parliament and the research people in Sri Lanka. So once we discovered something, we are coming with something new, I think we have to send that message to the Sri Lanka Parliament. Whether the parliamentarians are using the library it's another thing, but I think that is our duty to send all these things to the policymakers. So because Sri Lanka need these kind of new thinking, because now we are experiencing something what we call as the after pandemic. It's a new normal conditions. Everything are not like previous. So some are advantageous things are happen. Now this symposium, we can see it's about 60-70 people inside this room, but more than 100+ people are connecting via Zoom links. That's a fantastic thing. Whether you are in Sri Lanka or in other part of the world, everybody can be connected through this Zoom linkages or whatever is the thing. So those things are the advantages. But at the same time, so if you are not actively participating, you know that, so then this normal fruitful networking is missing. That is happening in the school level, even that is happening in the university level. Yes, we have delivered everything. We have changed our delivery patterns, but that's all fantastic. Even we have done our examination online, sir. They all are very good. But at the same time, I think students, they have to come to the university, do there some normal activities. That is also important because they are getting some experiences by doing some group activities like symposium, doing research and doing other activities. So therefore, I think as administrators, we have to allow those things also to be happen. But I am very happy now you have allowed us to get 50% of the capacity. Now we are working with 50+, something like that. Because certain faculties are working with the full capacity. Some faculties are somewhere around 50, and some faculties are around 25%. But still, the Omicron things are, spreading little fast. Yeah, that's also we have to be very concerned about that. But fortunately, now I think 80-85% of the Sri Lankan population was fully dual vaccinated. And today I have noticed that about 50% now they have taken the booster dose also. I think we are a bit safe and safer than most of the other part of the world. But we can't take all these things as granted. We have to adhere all these COVID-19 guidelines. And thank you very much. And especially I would like to thank all the members, all the other researchers. So they have sent their research findings to University of Sri Jayawardenepura to discuss in this forum. I think today and tomorrow going to be very fruitful 2 days for most of the colleagues at my faculty, at the Science Faculty of Applied Sciences, and to the university. And thank you very much organizing this symposium with all these difficulties. Thank you very much.
Guest of honor for the day, Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives, was unable to attend today due to unavoidable circumstances, but representing Her Excellency Tanya Hongre, Ms. Anouk Baran, the Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka and Maldives, is here with us. In this position, she heads the economic department and focuses on sustainability. And before moving to Sri Lanka, she was posted at the Netherlands Embassy in Vietnam and also worked at the Department for Sustainable Economic Development and the Department for Social Development at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, we would like to invite Ms. Anouk Baran to address the gathering.
So, good morning, everyone. And indeed, I would like to start with apologies on behalf of the ambassador. She fell ill last night, so it was indeed unavoidable for her to send me. And I'm very grateful that you were willing to receive me. And what I will do today is, of course, deliver what she prepared. And I understood from the earlier contributions that it's indeed very special that we can have this symposium in a hybrid version amidst difficult circumstances in Sri Lanka and also actually worldwide. So with the previous contributions, we already slowly moved into the content of this symposium. And with our contribution, we would like to have a humble, not scientific, I have to acknowledge, but a humble contribution to your symposium. So let me start with what we prepared, of course, by first acknowledging Professor Sampath Amuratunga. I have to apologize for my Sri Lankan pronunciation. Professor Sudanta Liniaji, Professor Laline Kuranuyake, Professor Upul Subasinghe, Professor Livia, and of course, the other deans and faculty members and the symposium coordinator. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking the University of Sri Jayawardenepura and the symposium committee for inviting me to speak at this year's symposium. I will start with some background on forest management in the Netherlands, because that was what I was asked to do. You might know that the Netherlands is a small country with many inhabitants, densely populated, and activities. And our forests are very fragmented. They are small, but of great value to our society. And they have a long history of human influence. And this influence is visible today, for example, through planted lanes with very old and majestic trees, forest walls, fire breaks, and the high share of certain tree species, particularly Scots pine. I don't know if you also have that one in Sri Lanka. No, probably not. And to explain the dominance of Scots pine, especially at the sandy soils of the Veluwe, which is where I grew up actually, we have to go back to the Middle Ages. Between the 10th and the 13th century, the melting of metals from ore was one of the main activities of our people. And this needed large amounts of wood for the production of charcoal. And it, of course, led to forest areas to decrease drastically. Besides this, a special agricultural system existed that was characterized by what we call in Dutch the potstal system. What was this? It was stables in which sheep or cows stayed overnight. And then during the day, the cattle would, of course, graze on the pastures. And the farmer took sods at the heathlands and mixed these sods with the dung in the stable. And once in a while, this highly fertile mixture was then distributed over the farmlands. Organic agriculture. It was a highly sensitive system though, because as one had to take care of the right balance between the different components. I think most of you know more about that than me, as we have chemistry students here as well. A disturbance of that equilibrium could result in unproductive soils and finally in less cattle and grain. Or even worse, the heathlands were used too intensively and drift sands could arise. And at the Veluwe, many of the such drift sands still exist, so we have to be careful as kids when playing there. Since the Middle Ages, through the invention of fertilizers, the potstall system lost importance, and then coal and oil were more and more used as a substitute for fuel wood. So since then, what has the Netherlands done for forests? The beginning of development of forest science in the Netherlands coincided with the miserable condition of forests in the 19th century. As both people and industry needed wood, it was necessary to develop techniques that protected the soil, restored the ecosystem productivity, and also supplied valuable products. Initially, the emphasis was on growth, yield, and benefits, and I think we see that in many countries worldwide even today. But in Europe, discussions arose on the naturalness of the forest and the principles of close-to-nature forestry. So the permanent forest movement, as well as the small-scale forestry systems, became more popular. And these ideas influenced Dutch forestry, especially in the second half of the 20th century. So only very recently, we started to do that paradigm shift. So integrated forest management developed, and since the 1990s, it was stimulated by the government, by my colleagues. It aimed at an integration of the three main forest functions: wood production, nature, and recreation. Multiple use at a small scale using mainly natural processes. And these measures focused on the development of a forest with a mix of three species and different age classes. So today, around 10% of the land surface in the Netherlands is covered by forests. And since 1982, the forest area has actually increased again, especially in the agricultural areas. However, Dutch forests are still very fragmented, and less than 1% of the forest areas are bigger than 100 hectares. So the scale is much smaller than in Sri Lanka. Ownership in the Netherlands is split 50-50 between state and private ownership. In the Netherlands, 13% of the land surface is protected. And those protected areas include also national parks. I visited some Sri Lankan national parks. I can assure you, yours are more beautiful. But the species you find in those Dutch forests are very different: the Scots pine and oak, seseli, and pedunculate oak. I know how those look like. I don't know how to pronounce the Latin names. Coniferous species occupy more than half of the forests, which is why we have all those Christmas trees, while broadleaves account for 45%. And in earlier times, all those trees were used for wood production. It was regarded as the main function of the forest, but now the importance of nature protection and recreation increased, which resulted in integrated forest management and multifunctional forests. So what did we learn from this? What did we learn from this history, and how did we translate the research on this into policy? So the increased importance of nature protection and recreation, and the participation of numerous CSOs in the development of policies and legislation on nature conservation, and the commitments made by the Dutch governments by signing international agreements, have influenced the content and the direction of new policies. The first written documents with rules and legislations were already done a long time ago, around the year 800, the time of Charles the Great. The forest managers were then called wood judges, that also really judged as the control of the proper use of forests was very strict. Then rulers and nobles started to interfere with forest management because they wanted to hunt and have a pleasant environment. Only in 1961, we had a Forest Act that ensured sustainable forest management, as we would call it today. Since then, there has been a concerted effort through various legislation that protects the conservation, and we have a Natural Beauty Act that provides fiscal advantages to owners and leaseholders of country estates. So today, the main forest functions that can be distinguished are wood production, protection of soil and water, conservation of biodiversity, and social services. Meanwhile, the Dutch have also realized the importance of parks and trees in cities, bringing the forest back to urban areas for recreation and climate change adaptation purposes. Besides those policies at the national level, we also have to implement more and more directives from the European level. And an example of this that I want to share with you is the Amsterdam Declaration partnership. It was launched in 2015 in the context of the Paris Climate Agreement, and it built on the New York Declaration on Forest Commitments, underlining the global importance to preserve primary forests and high conservation value areas. These declarations have a specific focus on responsible supply chain management and on more synergy between sustainable production and market uptake of sustainable commodities in our countries. So the Amsterdam Declarations were launched and signed in relation to the Paris Climate Agreement because land use changes caused 24% of climate change problems. And the declarations support the ambitions presented in the nationally determined contributions. Sri Lanka, of course, also has ambitions NDCs of producer countries and the global commitment to the SDGs, and also contribute to an intersectoral and holistic agenda addressing a number of SDGs. So the overall ambition through these partnerships is deforestation-free, sustainable commodities, and cooperating with the private sector and producing country actors. The aim is to reach this common goal of eliminating deforestation from agricultural supply chains and promoting sustainable economic development based on the SDGs. The Amsterdam Declaration partnership country governments join efforts to influence those key processes to enhance market uptake of sustainable commodities, complementary to supporting production side measures in countries of origin, like Sri Lanka. Responsible management of supply chains and sustainable trade are important cornerstones in reaching sustainable development, as through global value chains, consuming and producing countries like Netherlands and Sri Lanka have a common responsibility for sustainable business practice. Responsible business conduct, supporting governance, and strong civil society are important elements, according to us, for sustainable trade. So this Amsterdam Declaration partnership signatories are now mainly European, but I would be very happy to engage in discussions with Sri Lanka as well. Similarly, our programs in Sri Lanka, they follow those principles of the declaration, namely integrated forest management and responsible supply chain management, as per the Amsterdam Declaration. So what do we do in Sri Lanka? How do we collaborate on these principles? Here in Sri Lanka, the embassy is now working on 2 agroforestry projects in the tea and coconut plantations, because as you know, they are coping with degradation of land. In order to mitigate this, using Dutch know-how and agricultural practices, of course, adapted to the Sri Lankan context, with the collaboration with some of your best researchers, the projects aim to facilitate public-private partnerships to pilot an agroforestry integrated forest management approach in these degraded coconut and tea plantations, with the aim to enhance environmental as well as socioeconomic sustainability of the production systems. And the idea is that those projects will empower a mechanism facilitated by this team of Sri Lankan and Dutch experts to coordinate and create active partnerships with key stakeholders in the agricultural sector to review, upskill, and institutionalize agroforestry practices, integrated forest management in these plantations. The projects are currently implemented in participation with the IUCN, University of Peradeniya, the Tea Research Institute, and the Coconut Development Authority here in Sri Lanka. And our colleagues at the embassy are working almost on a daily basis on these projects to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible, because conserving our forests and other critical ecosystems is indispensable, an indispensable piece of keeping our climate goals within reach, as well as many other key priorities that we have together. Ensuring clean water, maintaining biodiversity, supporting livelihoods, and reducing the risk of spread of disease. So I hope that this symposium helps to spread not a disease, but of course, knowledge, and trigger discussions indeed between researchers and policymakers to lead to innovations that are needed to meet the SDGs, as these goals clearly state what needs to be done together for our environment, for our forests, for our societies, for our future. Thank you very much for inviting us today, and I wish you a very good symposium.
Thank you, ma'am. We are really glad to have you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached an important event of the day. Although this outstanding personality couldn't join us physically today, he's joining us virtually to grace this occasion. He's none other than the keynote speaker of the day, Professor Delvis Ethelevia. To give a short introduction about this great personality, he is a professor of geography and also a forest hydrologist. His focuses include biosphere climate interactions, snow science, and forest biogeochemistry. His field research projects include work in the forests of Maryland and Switzerland. Professor Delvis is also the program director for UD's Environmental Science and Environmental Studies undergraduate program. Not only that, but also he is the series editor of Ecological Studies, Analysis and Synthesis, associate editor of the Hydrological Processes, and the associate editor of the Journal of Plant Nutrition and Soil Science. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for the keynote speaker of the day, Professor Delvis Ethelevia, Founding Director, GI Science and Environmental Data Analyst Program, Department of Geography and Spatial Sciences, Joint Appointment, Department of Plant and Soil Sciences, University of Delaware, USA.
Okay, hello, everyone. I need permission to share my screen, if somebody can give me that permission. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen here. I'm going to start the slideshow. Let's see. Beginning. Okay, well, good morning, and I wish everyone a good day. All of the students that are in the session today and online, all of the academics, all of the administrators, and all the honored and distinguished guests that are present. I wish everyone a productive day, and I also hope that this is a productive and fruitful talk and a productive and fruitful conference for everyone in attendance. So I also thank the speaker for a very kind introduction, and so now I will get started on the talk. So my talk today is entitled Forest Hydrology in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what I'm going to really focus on here today is the intersection between technology and the intersection with forests and forest hydrology. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that this talk is a compilation of the work of many people, not just myself. At the bottom of the screen here, you can see I have a giant thank you to about 20 or 30 people that helped formulate some of the ideas that I'm going to be sharing today. And I think it's important to give them credit. And if you take note in red here, a large part of this talk is based off but builds from this paper in ecohydrology. And the DOI of the paper is listed here. It's open access, so I encourage everyone to read it, as it does serve as a basis for this talk. It also, I gave a series of talks at the University of Tokyo, at the American Geophysical Union, and in other venues as well. And so this talk is a build off of those, but it also goes further. And so I'm using that as a base, and I'm going from there. So with that, and having given my colleagues credit for all of their great ideas that are part of this talk, I'll move on. Okay, so what is the Fourth Industrial Revolution? I think that's a good place to start. And the Fourth Industrial Revolution was coined really by Klaus Schwab, who's a professor and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And he published a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution back in 2016. So it's a fairly new idea, but not a brand new idea. But the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we've all heard the term Industrial Revolution before, and so forth, that happened way back in Europe in the 1700s, especially out of the UK, and then expanded from there. But the fourth industrial revolution is different. And it's really about the ubiquity of technology that drives the way we work, the way we live, how we interact with each other and with the planet. And think about this. The pace of technological change now is unprecedented. It's unprecedented in scope and the rate of change. We're seeing changes in technology over the course of the last 5 years that are really quite remarkable. Advances in human genome sequencing, advances in AI technologies, advances in environmental sensing, all of these things. And so I think it really presents us as an opportunity as foresters and forest hydrologists to take a step back and to see how, as forest hydrologists and foresters, we can leverage some of these developments in the technological fields to help mitigate water shortages, to help mitigate environmental problems that are associated with forest biosphere interactions worldwide. So, here's the problem. Approximately 1 in 9 people lack access to safe water on our planet right now. That's about 840 million people, give or take. We know all you have to do is look at the news. There's water shortages in certain places. There's too much water in other places. It's too poor of quality in yet other places. We have water and disease outbreaks in certain places, especially where infrastructure is poor. We have climate change refugees that are partly related to water. So we have all of these issues. And it's a timely endeavor to take a look at some of these changes. Why? Because we're in UN's International Decade for Action on Water and Sustainable Development. And of course, water is a big part of that. And that's 2018 to 2028. So I would like to discuss today to identify some of the convergence opportunities that we have so that we can leverage the expertise and the technology that's available to forest hydrologists and environmental scientists for the greater good. And I think it's a great time to be a scientist. I think that we have a real opportunity here to make a difference. And I would argue that if we combine some of the fruits of the fourth industrial revolution and we leverage those, and we combine them with the One Health movement, which also is partly related, at least, to the World Economic Forum. And this is the integration, if you will, of the environment, of animals, and of people, including plants. And so as part of the environment. So if we leverage that interconnection and the interconnectivity of the different inhabitants in the biosphere with the fourth industrial revolution, we may be able to make some great progress. So let's take a look. What is this convergence of opportunities that I'm talking about? And I think there's quite a few of them. And then we'll turn our attention to the graphic that's over on the other side. But first off, we have a huge advances, especially in the last decade or so, in environmental sensing. Stuff that wasn't available just 15 years ago. And this also includes the high frequency sensing. I'll show you some examples of some of these sensors. It includes open source hardware and software. It includes machine learning and big data. And if we take a look over at the graphic here for a moment, we have this intersection, and this is right from this paper that I was telling you about in the first slide. We have this intersection of technology and high frequency sensing, this Venn diagram part A. We also have the open source resources and communal knowledge that's being harnessed. You think of the R programming languages as an example. And then we have the advent of big data and machine learning that creates an opportunity. And if we do it right, and if we leverage this, we can inform policy, and this is all synergistic, policy, advancements in eco-hydrological modeling, and advances in measurement and observation. There's examples here. Thinking green infrastructure in cities, as was just spoke about from the ambassador's office, in advances in quantifying ecosystem services. This is important stuff, not only in more natural forests, but also in urban forests. So we do have a real opportunity here to make a difference. And so if we converge this and we think about it in terms of the technologies that are available, the resources that are available, we can make a big difference. Another thing to recognize here, and I'll get more into this into detail, is how we train students. How we train students in hydrology and environmental science 10 years ago I would argue, is somewhat outdated. My own education, you also have to keep updating your skill sets, especially now with the advent of these technologies. So we have very large end data sets now. We have data sets with over 1 million data points with relatively little effort. And you get a breakdown of traditional statistics. They don't work when you have supersized ends. If you have 43,000 samples, 1 million samples, it just breaks down. And so I'll go over that in a bit. We have an increased modeling power now with all the advent of supercomputers that are more powerful than ever before with these high frequency sensors. And that really will allow us to improve model calibrations and allow us better conceptualizations that can even improve models that way. And I would argue that if we play our cards right, that this convergence will lead to a transformation, a transformation in the way we conduct environmental science in the future, and possibly a paradigm shift in the way that we practice forest hydrology and environmental science, as well as educate students. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to go part by part here. But if we take a look at this first graphic, what you can see over here on the left-hand side is we have a dissolved organic carbon, we have nitrate in the middle, and we have stream discharge. And this is just time and over the course of a storm. And this is with 15-minute data. Now you can go even finer if you wish, but this is based on 15-minute data. Now in the old days, one would go out, they'd get a grab sample from a stream, they'd filter it, they'd take it in, they'd do the chemical analysis, all very important stuff. Then we move from there to ISCO samplers, these automatic samplers that can take a stream sample every so often. Now we have this advent of a spectralizer, and these come from, there's a picture here in the middle with, it looks like a mini torpedo, and you stick that into the stream, and it's measuring the UV fingerprint of the light that runs over the stream. And from that fingerprint in the spectral signature, hence this is called a spectralizer or a spectrophotometer. And again, these are out of Vienna, but you can put them in streams and come up with these very detailed curves of what's going on in a stream. Why is that important? Because now hydrology and environmental science is moving to these concepts like hot spots and hot moments. And so it's this little window of time or this little piece of a whole forested land where maybe a lot of the biogeochemical reactivity is occurring. But we wouldn't know that unless we can pinpoint that. So maybe there's an area near a tree trunk that's emitting all of this nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. And maybe other areas further from the tree are not, as an example. And so it would be important to know what those are. Or maybe there's a time of the year in streams where there's a lot more DOC cycling, a lot more carbon cycling. Well, that could be important for climate change too. And the graph here really gets at land use. And so you can see that there's storm DOC yields, and then there's storm nitrate. And this is over different land uses, which is quite remarkable because you can compare agricultural land uses in Sri Lanka, tea plantations or the cocoa plantations, urban areas, as well as forested areas. And so this is a really good tool to get this high frequency sensing. Another example is this here. And I'm talking about accelerometers. Here's an example of an accelerometer, this little piece here. We all have accelerometers in our smartphones. When you turn it, that it tells you the screen turns, and that's partly an accelerometer. Not a very expensive piece of equipment, but a very important one, because if you measure the sway frequency of the tree in wind, you can interpret, with some work, of course, how much interception there actually was. And so the difference between these two curves here with the frequencies can tell you how much water was intercepted when it rained by the plant, in this case, 6.6 millimeters. Wow, what a way to revolutionize measurements. And you can get far better measurements than you could the old-fashioned way, which was to stick some buckets underneath the tree and measure the water that goes through it and measure the water that runs down the tree stem. Very different. And so this is a really good tool that can be used. And then finally, here's an example from a colleague in Germany and Professor Tetzlaff, And here's in situ measurements of water isotopes from root water uptake, from soil water vapor. Again, 10 years ago, a lot of these things were not possible, but they're possible now because of better computing, better techniques. And so this is the whole concept of high frequency environmental sensing. Now, if we twin that with open source and hardware, just like I showed you in that Venn diagram, this is very powerful. So here's a graph out of a book that I published with colleagues in 2020. But what you can see here is an explosion in open source hardware. So we have years, and then we have percentage of total results. And you'll notice that the x-axis goes to about 2018, and you'll notice that the y-axis is rather small. It's less than 1%. But we're starting from ground zero, if you will. And so the gray line is all sciences, if you will, in terms of open source and open hardware. And the green, the dashed black line here is the hydrologic. And you can see around, especially around 2013, 2015, there's been an explosion in open source use in open source hardware in hydrology. One example is pictured here, and this is out of Canada, but there's a high resolution stem flow sample here made with off the market parts. You can go to a hardware store, get a lot of this. You can do a little bit with a leaf wetness sensor, and for not that much money, we're talking maybe $100, a little bit more perhaps. I forget exact amount, but it's not that much money compared to commercially available, but these really work. And this paper in Journal of Hydrology shows this great example of an open hardware. So I would encourage you to think about that. And then, of course, in terms of the open source hardware, software, we have R. And this is an example from Alex Tischer out of Germany in my book in 2020. It was an edited volume. And he goes over, it has examples of R and using R in statistics and really making a difference. And there's a great user community there. Okay, here's an example of laser scanning. Now, this is about ants, and I'll promise I'll get back to water in a moment, but ants are an important part of any forest ecosystem. And this is out of Panama. But what I'm showing here is a laser scan of a vine surface. And the ants really go up and down these vines all the time. Those are the main transportation highways. But using the same technology for water, this is actually a piece of bark, okay, for New York City. Here is somebody in one of the sample trees in New York City. And this is what a bark sample looks like with laser scanning. Why is this important? Because we have unprecedented access to really get at water storage capacities of bark, which are important for the water cycle. And we can relate that to the time of year. Are the leaves in? Are the leaves off, out? Are they just coming out and emerging? Or are they senescing and turning yellow? So you could do this for leaves, which we have. You could do this laser scanning for bark surfaces, as shown here. So a whole new window in the world. And again, with laser sensing. And to finish up the ants, here's a smoothed image, this one on the left, of a vine surface. But you really can see in the other graphic, it says that the rougher the surface is, and the more relief up and down that we have, the slower that the ants crawl. Well, that makes intuitive sense, but it does depend on species. Okay, let's move to Japan. I was a JSPS fellow. I very much enjoyed my time in Japan. And I'll show a couple of examples, but I was involved in this 2017 study with researchers from Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute in this 2,157 dots across Japan here. The main, we split Honshu into Eastern and Western, Hokkaido, and then Kyushu. And so here is the study area, all of those sites. So we used big data, and what we did here, and I won't go over all of this graphic, but we used a boosted regression tree analysis. In this RI appears a relative influence of each environmental variable. So the higher that number is, the more important it is. And we compared Japan as a whole. So those are the black bars. And so this is the amount of soil organic carbon available at 30 centimeters as a function of stand density, soil group, slope aspect, whatever, you can read those. And then we divided Japan up into Hokkaido, Eastern Honshu, Western Honshu. And you can see here the power, because if I just look at, for instance, the slope aspect, if I look at the black line, slope aspect is much more important in Eastern Honshu to explain soil organic carbon in the forest than it is in Western Honshu. Well, how interesting. So different areas are being differentially affected in terms of the carbon content of the soils based on all of these variables. So it's a biogeographic analysis, but uses big data and the techniques of big data to get at the story. Another example, and this is another time when I was in Japan, but the interesting thing here was I used the NEED, which is National Institute of Environmental Disasters, their rainfall simulator. And we use these instruments called laser distrometers. And basically, there's a laser that passes between a receiver and a sender, a signaler, if you will. And as a raindrop passes through that laser field, the speed at which it does is related to the velocity of the raindrop. And the drop in magnitude of the voltage of the laser from one end to another is related to the diameter of the raindrop. So if you have diameter and you have velocity, you can calculate all kinds of wonderful things. Erosion, the kinetic energy for erosion. And so this study was really looking at how different tree species in Japan influence raindrop sizes underneath the canopy. And we had data on over 100 million drops. So no Excel here. Excel dies at 37,000 lines. You need a much higher computing here. But if you've got it, you can see that for conifers, for broadleaf trees, for leafless broadleaf trees, there's a difference in the types of throughfall, canopy drip or free throughfall, and there's also a difference in the canopy drip diameter. Why is that important? Because the more water I have coming through the canopy, the moister my soil. That can change soil pore pressures, which could possibly enhance a landslide in certain cases. Or maybe there's more water getting to the stem of the tree, and that changes the bacterial composition of the soil, which could in turn change the amount of CO2 sequestration or CO2 emission in soil respiration. So all of these dynamics are going on. So I would argue that we're in a new age of forest hydrology. We're combining sensor technologies, open source resources, and big data. And people are using these techniques now, some more than others, but this is the future of forest hydrology. And we're going to wing from low samples, where you get 30, 40, 50 samples, to thousands or even millions or even tens of millions. And so we need to really think about how we transition from this limited end environment to a virtually unlimited environment. And really, to harness this type of data, you have to move from traditional statistics to machine learning. If you do that, you can get a lot of information, and you get new information that we haven't had before. Very interesting, I think. And so these new sensing advances can lead to new insights for these hot spots and hot moments like I gave you for the streams. That will advance theory. But more importantly, it will also advance problem solving. And I was very pleased to see some of the initial guests and honorary distinguished guests to talk about sustainability problem solving science. This is where it's at. If you look at this graphic, on the x-axis, we're going from fundamental science to sustainability problem solving science. We have that same Venn diagram that I had before among high frequency sensing, big data, and so forth. And we're going from translations of science into solutions to solutions for decision makers. And I think technology is going to be a huge piece here because it gives us unprecedented precision into these processes. It's a new window on the world, if you want to think about it in those terms. But it's going to require this new quantification. While it's going to lead to new knowledge and hopefully new policies to optimize water conservation, it's also going to lead to changes in the way we train students. So more programming, more environmental sensing, electrical engineering, more classes in machine learning, more classes in policy so that students can apply the forestry and hydrology to policy to make a difference ultimately. And this is how we're going to get a greener environment. So some thought questions that I leave you with, and then I'll conclude. What do you see as the future of eco-hydrology, forest hydrology? What role will technology and open source play? Now, I've mentioned a lot of my thoughts about this, but I encourage you to ponder these questions yourself and think about this, because again, we are at a unique moment in time. It's a very good time to be a human, despite the fact we have COVID and despite the fact we have other challenges. We have the ability now, I think today, I'm very optimistic, to make differences that we couldn't make before. So how can we leverage this paradigm shift to benefit all and make more resilient, sustainable futures? So in conclusion, I would say, we have to parallel advances in environmental sensing, modeling, open source software, all of these things that have created these new opportunities. We have to seize these synergies that are inherent in convergence of these different entities I talked about for a more flexible and relevant science. And that's a key point, because every place is unique, right? Sri Lanka is different from the Netherlands, which is different from the United States. So it's not a one size fits all, but with the technologies, we can really tailor things to a much better extent. And again, that will build a more resilient and sustainable framework. And in my opinion, we do have to change the way that we educate students. Obviously you still need to understand the fundamentals of hydrology and flow and all those types of things. But we also have to add in more programming, more math in some cases, more gadgetry, and to really understand how to do this. And the nice thing is, a lot of the open source gadgetry, is just tens of dollars. And you can really make a difference, and students can be equipped with some of this stuff. So here's my references. The red one here is the Advancing Eco-Hydrology in the 21st Century, Convergence of Opportunities, led by Andrew Guswer from Smith College and colleagues, all the ones that I mentioned on the first page. I was the senior last author on this. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, this book, Forest Water Interactions, some of this that I've talked about also emanates from this particular book. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions in the time that I have remaining, and I'll stop the screen share for now, but if I need to bring it back up, I will. So thank you very much for your attention, and have a great day. I'll stay here for questions.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
We would like to take this opportunity to appreciate our special invitees for gracing this event with their presence. To present the tokens of appreciation, we cordially invite Senior Professor Sudanta Liyanage, Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura.
To express our sincere gratitude to our guest of honor for the day, we cordially invite Ms. Anouk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Sri Lanka and Maldives, to accept the token of appreciation from Professor Sudanta Liyanage.
Thank you very much, sir. And please remain for a moment. Now it's time to appreciate the constant support and the guidance of two special individuals. To present the token of appreciation, we cordially invite another pillar of support. This is none other than Professor Upul Subasinghe, the Symposium Chair and the Head of the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Next, the token of appreciation will be awarded to Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura.
Thank you, sir. To mark the end of the inaugural ceremony of 26th International Forestry and Environment Symposium 2022, organized by the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Dr. G.G.T. Chandratilaka, the symposium coordinator, to extend the word of thanks.
Thank you very much. Though our Sir Senior Professor Sampath Amarathunga is not here, first of all, Chief Guest Senior Professor Sampath Amarathunga, Chairman University Grant Commission, and Guest of Honor, Her Excellency Ms. Anuk Baron, Deputy Ambassador of Sri Lanka. Of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Vice Chancellor, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Senior Professor Sudhantha Liyanage, and Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean, Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Professor Upul Subasinghe, Symposium Chair and Head of the Department of Forestry and Environmental Sciences, Keynote Speaker, Professor Delvis Ethelevia, Department of Geography and Spatial Science, and Department of Plant and Soil Sciences, University of Delaware, USA, and Research Professor Cyril Vijayasundara, Institute of Fundamental Studies, Hantana Kandy, and Professor Sanjay K. Sharma, Dean, Jaipur Engineering College and Research University, Jaipur, India. Foreign delegates, Dean of the Faculties, Head of the Departments, Professors and Lecturers of the universities, and heads and representatives from the institutes, and dear presenters and my dear students. On behalf of the Symposium Organizing Committee, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, to its valuable support to the success of Symposium 2022. Secondly, I would like to thank Chief Guest, Senior Professor Sampath Amarathunga, Chairman UGC University Grant Commission, and former our Vice Chancellor for gracing this valuable occasion. Also, we highly appreciate Guest of Honor, Ms. Anuk Baron. Madam, thank you very much for your valuable insights on the role of academics to play for achieving environmental sustainability. And Senior Professor Sudhantha Liyanage, our Vice Chancellor. Sir, thank you very much for your continuous and valuable guidance given from the inception of the Symposium 2022. You have been an immense support and pillar of strength throughout this event in every aspect. Without your support, I think this would be not successful like this. And again, Senior Professor Lalin Karunanayaka, Dean, Faculty of Applied Sciences, he played a vital role on Symposium 2022. Thank you very much for your prompt support, and we are grateful for your comments and suggestions. Our keynote speaker, actually, we are 10 hours and 30 minutes ahead from USA time. So he dedicated his time for our conference. So I should thank Professor Delvis Ethelevia, Professor in Hydrology, Department of Geography and Spatial Science, and Department of Plant Science and Soil Sciences, University of Delaware, USA. Thank you very much for accepting our request. with short notice, and we took forward to develop strong collaboration with your host institution in future. My sincere appreciation goes to our team talk speakers. There are two team talk speakers, Professor Cyril Vijayasundara from Institute of Fundamental Studies, Hantana Kandi, and Professor Sanjay K. Sharma from Jaipur. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation and delivering theme talk for Symposium 2022. Our department is taking continuous effort to update its academic quality every year. This year, I should thank the editorial boards of Environmental Quality Management by John Wiley and Sons, Trees, Forests, and People by Elsevier, which are indexed in Scopus, for collaborating to publish the selected papers from our symposium for their special issues in their journals. Reviewing abstracts and session chairing are two important tasks of the Symposium 2022. Papers were reviewed by nearly 50 selected reviewers from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura, University of Colombo, University of Moratuwa, University of Ruhuna, and Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. On behalf of the Symposium Organizing Committee, I highly appreciate your volunteer support on reviewing and session chairing. Head of the department and the chair of Symposium are the major contributors of the Symposium. Professor Upul Subasinghe, please accept my heartfelt gratitude, sir, for your valuable support and comments given toward the success of Symposium 2022. Further, I should mention our all academic members of the department for their immense support. Actually, this event has always been teamwork from the day one until today. Further, I would like to thank all the technical staff and the office staff of our department for their active support for the Symposium 2022. I would like to thank our assistant lecturer, Ms. Nirmani, our demonstrator, Mr. Costa, Ms. Chamali, Ms. Hansani, Ms. Shashini, and Ms. Nurani. Actually, they did the hard job to cover the core areas of the Symposium 2022. Without their support, I think we will not able to have a successful symposium. At the same time, this year we don't have technical support from a third party. So all the technical aspects is covered by our undergraduate students led by Mr. Himarsha. So thank you very much for your support. I do believe that experiences you have collected during these activities would be very much useful for your future careers. Here, my thanks should go to our designer, professional one, and printer, Cybergate Private Limited, for nice design and good quality printing. On behalf of the Symposium Organizing Committee, I would like to thank the authors and presenters who submitted their valuable findings for Symposium 2022. Without your dedication, this event would not have been a productive and successful one like this. So at the end, I would like to invite you all to join with us virtually for this wonderful 2-day event and enjoy your science. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. With that, we have reached the end of the inaugural ceremony of the International Forestry and Environment Symposium 2022. Next, we will be having the technical sessions via Zoom. We cordially invite everyone to join the sessions as well. And we are thankful for everyone present here today to make this forum more than successful. Thank you and be safe and have a nice day. And please rise for the national anthem.
Sri Lanka Mata, Abba Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata, Sundara Sri